This is Glentress Forest in the Scottish borders, about 30 miles from Edinburgh. It is also the site of my first ever trail half marathon. I admit to being woefully naive about what to expect from this race.
It's relentless.
I hadn't quite appreciated just how much climbing would be involved. The total ascent of 2,953 feet is just short of the full height of a Scottish Munro. For some reason, this information either didn't compute with me, or I'd conveniently chosen to ignore it. And so, standing on the start line alongside 250 other hardy souls, I had a mixture of nerves, excitement, and, well, apathy. Apart from the hills, I had little idea about what lay in store, but I was aware that the opening to the Glentress Half Marathon was going to be a baptism of fire.
6 kilometers of climbing to begin with. Nice little introduction to this race. No idea about the route, no idea how to pace this.
Every other race I've run in the past has been more or less flat, and I have a pretty good idea about how fast I need to run in order to leave some energy at the end. But when I was confronted with an unrelenting uphill course, I didn't know how much energy to exert, especially in these early stages. I just didn't want to burn out after 20 minutes.
1 kilometer, at 5 minutes 49, 20k to go.
Glentress Forest is known as one of Scotland's finest mountain bike trails, which means it's full of windy single tracks.
It's very narrow. Trying to overtake or be overtaken is very difficult.
And the unrelenting gradient for the first 6 kilometers of the race was also starting to take its toll.
Coming up for 4 kilometers. For another 2 of climbing. It's been the hardest start to run I've ever done.
From the little knowledge of the course that I did have, I knew that the first 6 kilometers were pretty much all uphill, but after that there was a long descent. In the back of my mind, I was really focusing on this.
I think it'll be a psychological boost to get to the top of the climb. I know that that's all behind me. There are more climbs in the race, but getting over that first literal hurdle will be very significant.
I have a habit of vocalizing positive mantras whilst running. Even when things aren't going well, I seem to be able to convince myself otherwise. Today's mantra was all about completing the initial 6 kilometer climb.
Just get to 6. Just get to 6.
The top of this climb was nearly 1/3 of the whole course, and I knew that if I could get to this point, I would have enough belief to carry me round the rest of these hills.
6.4 kilometers. That's 4 miles of solid climbing. That was unbelievably tough. It's very treacherous underfoot. I almost slipped over many times. You can't take your eyes off the ground either. It's so wet and muddy. But that's a big boost to get that done. We're doing fine so far, so we'll keep going.
Not knowing these hills or the windy route which meandered back and forth was both a blessing and a curse.
It's 9 kilometers in about 58 minutes.
At this point, I really didn't want to know when I'd be facing another tough hill, but at the same time, it was a nice surprise when the course suddenly opened out into a beautiful but challenging section of single track through the trees.
I'm just not very technical on these trail paths. Always having to look down at the ground. There's the rocks, puddles, mud. You have to concentrate so hard. That is officially halfway. I'm feeling pretty good. It's taken quite a lot out of me the first half, particularly that first climb. 1 hour, 8 minutes so far. No idea what to think about that with regards to my pace. But this course is hard.
4 weeks ago, I ran a half marathon at Loch Rannoch, and my time at the halfway point was about 48 minutes, 20 minutes faster than today. The first half of this race has shown me that pacing, times, and expectations all go out the window on trail runs. The perils of revisiting a location a week after the event to film your drone footage means that you are open to a change in weather. Mercifully, the foot of snow I encountered at the top of Glentress Forest a week after this race was not present on race day.
Coming up for 13 kilometers. This route, just endless back and forwards, climbing up through the woods. The gradient's not too steep. It's just relentless.
At various points, I see runners ahead of me walking up steep parts of the climb. I try to keep running, but it's hard not to be influenced by the actions of those around me. Unbeknownst to me, the uphill sections seem to be my strength. Downhill, definitely not so. I find myself overtaking many of the runners who flew past me going downhill at speed, and we spend the next few kilometers constantly swapping positions.
Coming up to 15 kilometers. You've got 6 to go. Just hope there's not too many more hills.
It feels like we've reached the top of the forest, and the sprawling views across the rolling countryside certainly suggest that we have. I naively start thinking that was all going to be downhill from here. Of course, what I didn't account for was...
This is the evil climb. It's really steep. Oh my. It's not long though. It's not long. I can't imagine many people run up this bit.
At 16 kilometers into the race, this ridiculously steep section of the course is especially unwelcome.
Catch my breath and then go again. Come on.
With the evil climb out the way, the course opens up again and there's another long section of downhill.
4k to go. At this point, I'm not sure if I'd say that I've been enjoying this. I have been enduring it. Getting close though.
The final few kilometers of the race coast back down through the trees to the start line. The last part of any race always feels like a slog, but I'm safe in the knowledge now that the gradient is all downhill.
Getting close to 20 kilometers. Nearly there.
I finally recognize a part of the course that I ran on near the start. My first trail half marathon is nearly done. Of nearly 250 runners, only 5 complete the half marathon course in under 2 hours, with the winning time being 1 hour 44 minutes. I come in 47th place in a time of 2 hours, 23 minutes and 19 seconds. I have nothing to compare this to, so I suppose I have to be happy with that. At various points in this race, I was questioning why I was enduring this self-inflicted discomfort. A half marathon is a long enough distance to run without adding in nearly 3,000 feet of climbing. But for me, it always comes back to the idea that you are testing your limits, pushing through the discomfort to finish something you knew would be really difficult. If you're successful, the confidence this gives you can ripple through into all areas of your life. And if nothing else, this whole experience of beasting myself on these hills and the Scottish borders will always be memorable.